Aries 21, a pugilist entering the ring, a fighter, a boxer. And we can see this image of the will to power, finding strength and taking on opponents and developing the ability to overcome. We can see it that way. And in fact, my sister saw it that way. This is her sun sign. And so I've been watching this Sabian degree all of my life. She's an older sister. And it's very interesting to notice that mostly we will study our own Sabian degrees because we're trying to learn about who we are rather more than what the Sabian symbols mean. We're using Sabian symbols as a tool for self-understanding. That's typical. But if you actually want to understand the Sabian symbols as such, and there's plenty of reason for doing that, there's a profound wisdom within them as a set, then the best way to do that is not really to finish the job when you've studied yourself, but to start to study other people. And this takes it to the next level. And so with my sister, I saw how she constantly took on the challenges of life to become stronger. Now, of course, you don't really become strong immediately. So anyone who has this degree emphasized, they're developing the will to power. They don't start off as powerful. And in my sister's case, she perceived herself as lacking power and wouldn't accept that, refused to accept that. And so whenever there was a situation where it looked as though she wasn't going to get her way, she'd take on a challenge, she'd introduce conflict into the situation, and she'd fight. And that made her life rather fractious and conflicted, and she took us all on, Dad particularly, but me too, and you know, she really was a fiery force in our lives in order for her to develop her own strength. And this is the essential mystery here, that you won't be able to develop this kind of power, this kind of ability towards victory, unless you actually engage with conflict. If you think about the life of a boxer, it's all about taking on someone who wants to actually put you down. You know, it's not a path of harmony. It's a path of power. And that has its own merits, of course, but one of the merits is not harmonious living and calm enjoyment of being. That's not it. This is a different one. This is Aries. This is the fighter. However, another way of seeing the contest between two fighters in a ring is just the same as the Tai Chi symbol. There is no significant difference between these two. So you have the dark and the light, and they're actually in constant conflict with each other. And neither can win. And this is true of boxing too. Neither can win. Not in the end. They might win this particular fight, but then there's another. And if they win another, eventually they're going to be put down because they'll find somebody younger and stronger comes along. We can't win any of our battles. The idea of victory is foolish, really. It's a temporary idea. We can't win the battle of life. All we can ever do is play. And so if you actually want to somehow feel yourself to be in victory over life itself, then the victory is as much to do with knowing when you've lost and moving on as knowing when you've won and resisting the temptation of expending more energy than you need to defeat your opponent. So we have this strange idea where the sensitivity that you bring to your conflict is the spiritual message. So by all means conflict with situations and people, and this is the only way that you'll ever grow in strength. But only to the point where you've actually discovered who's the winner for yourself. And if actually the situation is stronger than you, if you can't do this, if you take on a task, a job, you know, right, I want to try this job, I want to become that professional person, or I want to engage in this project. And you find yourself not up to the task, and you find yourself making mistakes and becoming stressful and angry, and you're just not up to it. Well, that's okay. Just move on. Understand that you have demonstrated to yourself a weakness within you, and be sensitive to that and move on before anybody else notices. And if you've developed a strength and you can see that in a particular situation you've got it down, you know what to do, you're on top of it entirely, move on. You're wasting your time to stay there. In this context, I mean, there are other things that you can do, but in this context, we're talking about finding out whether or not you've got the strength or weakness in a particular conflicted situation. So it's all to do with discovery, really, discovering our strengths and weaknesses. Because if a person knows where exactly their strength lies and where exactly their weakness lies, then they can handle life really well. Now, it's absolutely foolish to rebel blindly against a more powerful force. You might be bullied, as indeed my sister was, and she rebelled blindly against my dad, and it didn't work. He wasn't having it. But what she did, she left home early, really young, and struck out on her own adventure, and she looked for experience. This is inherent within this degree. We have to understand that raw experience, pioneering work, danger, adventure, that's where conflict arises that we have to deal with. And therefore, those adventures are a requirement for us to develop this power. We have to go out there and be courageous, not reckless and not silly. We can't take on someone that we can't win against. We can't take them on. If we're silly about it, then we just lose our sense of confidence. If we're reckless, like really stupid, then you're going to lose all your resources and possibly your life. No, it's about showing courage to strike out blindly into the world, but just being very sensitive to whether or not your being in harm's way is something you can survive or not. If you can't, then get out of the way. However, if you feel that a situation can be resolved by punching through, then punch. It's not always a spiritual principle to pull your punches. It's sometimes necessary to bring to bear upon a situation the full force of your power. And what makes it appropriate is if the other person, your enemy or your partner, whichever way you want to look at it, if they're also trying to find out where their powers are, where their weaknesses and strengths lie, then you got to give them the courtesy, the respect of fighting, and fighting with all of your power. And you got to do that with situations too. Many situations can be punched through. The feelings that we have of not being up to the task are false. We are up to the task in many cases, provided we give all that we've got in the moment. And not concern ourselves with the other side of things. Actually, it's not our business if we hurt someone else. I know how controversial that sounds, but it really isn't our business. Especially when it comes to somebody's feelings, for example. If they enter the ring, then that's what they've done. They've chosen to take you on, and that's because you are who you are, all of it. So give them that. Be as strong as you are. Win, if you can. Now, if somebody doesn't want to take you on, and they say, look, no, you carry on, then leave them alone. This isn't to do with bullying, this degree. This is to do with having a fair fight with somebody who's as strong as you and maybe a little bit stronger until you learn that extra punch through. The the teachings that we've been subject to for many hundreds of years has robbed us of a certain warrior quality. There was a time when we had gods on earth who were warrior gods. In other words, war was understood to be sacred. Now, the way war is fought today, there is no sacredness or even decency within it. It's just cruel and horrible. And if you think of that, then that cruelty and horribleness is wrong in any sense that I know. But war itself is not. Fighting itself is not. You can bring spiritual consciousness into a fight with the clear intention of putting your opponent down, even to the point of death in some cases, if that's the contract that you've made with this opponent. And this failure to include this in our spiritual nature has led to many distortions in our understandings. Male spirituality is the warrior, partly. There's other stuff too, but the warrior is not present within our community. Hence the distortion of war in our world. If the warrior spirit was alive, as it was alive in the medieval times of the knights of King Arthur and so on, if that spirit of the knight, the warrior knight, was alive, then life would be a lot clearer and cleaner, and we would learn more about who we are.